Good evening, good evening, everybody. Good evening and happy 2023 from Black Talk Platform, where I am your host, Dr. Deborah D. Jenkins. I am so happy to be back. We took a holiday break and we are back. And it is so fitting that we are back this first Friday in January because that is the very special edition with my guest. Pastor Anthony Davis of the Harvest Restoration Ministries. This episode is always entitled Chatting with the Pastor, and Pastor Davis is the pastor of choice. And I'm going to tell you why before I bring him on. I want to just share a few words because it's been that long since we've been on. I want to just say thank you to Pastor Davis and to Pastor Sammy Cologne. These are my brothers in ministry in our community and beyond. And they have been nothing but consistent in their love and support of my ministry, the work I do beyond ministry for the greater community, with a specific emphasis on the uplift of Black people, not only in New York, but throughout the country. And I'm just so grateful for their brotherhood. And I just needed to say that because we really don't know when we'll ever have an opportunity to share our gratitude with people. And for Pastor Davis, who actually was my very first guest on Black Talk Platform when I started back in May of 2020. It was in response to the murder of Brother George Floyd. I had been an activist here in New York, and that activism took me to places like Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. But of course, we were all hit with the global pandemic. And so, what I decided to do was to continue to have voice, but it would be as a digital activist. And Black Talk Platform was birthed right here through the StreamYard platform, and initially only on Facebook, where we enjoyed massive viewership. And of course, as we slowly return to what we call normal, that viewership has decreased, but we have expanded. We are now also viewed on YouTube, Twitter, and most recently LinkedIn. I didn't do any um advertising for tonight's show because I knew we were getting back into things, and we have some things that we want to discuss, some current events, which is what we typically do when I'm chatting with the pastor here. But I also wanted to share something that I had put on Twitter for those of you who may come back and watch it later. And you follow me over on Twitter. I had posted this. Most of you know that I'm a restorative justice expert. Restorative justice has 5 parts. My emphasis for much of that time has been on youth development and criminal justice reform. When I realized that just by helping a returning citizen get back on his or her feet, that was not enough. We needed more. So I got more involved with the redress portion of restorative justice. And I've been doing that for a couple of years now. And I'm grateful to have the ear of the New York State Assembly Speaker. I am grateful to have the ear of Pastor Davis and my state senator. I'm grateful to have the ear also of Pastor Davis's and my New York State Assemblyman and others who are working at the state level around the issue of reparations. To be sure, the bill passed out of the New York State Assembly last year leave much to be desired, and we are hopeful that they will come to a point where they revise it in a way that really represents what reparations mean in this country to Black who are descendants of enslaved people here. Anyway, to that end, this morning I just posted up on Twitter this, and I'm quoting: "Serious question. For those who are fighting for reparations, are you doing tangible things within your community to uplift the Black community, even if it's within your employment? If so, do you mind sharing? Well, that tweet has been viewed almost 3,000 times, liked 35 times, with a few quotes. It's actually more than the three that are showing up because I've interacted all day with people. And I wanted to share that only because one brother said, he hates questions like that or tweets like that because it's almost like a gotcha, or to say something like, if you're not doing anything in your community, then you can't speak on reparations. That's absolutely not what I meant. And Pastor Davis will tell you or attest to the fact that that's not my heart. My heart is this reparations battle is a long and hard and an uphill one. And we cannot just sit around on Twitter or any other social media spaces lamenting about reparations while we pass each other on the street daily, or while we live in communities that are falling down because the politicians are not doing what they can do to uplift our communities. We have a responsibility to one another. And so that's what prompted the question. Only that. I want to know what other people are doing, because what you're doing may assist me in what I'm doing, and what I'm doing may assist you in what you're doing. And I think we have to come out of these silos that we often put ourselves in as it relates to the work that we do, and become those who collaborate a little bit more, so that our work will be that much more meaningful and have a greater reach. That's what prompted the question. For those of you who said, well, she's trying to, I'm not, I don't even have time for the games. I tell you, I don't have time for the games. And so I really wanted to know. And as a result of that, there are people in Baltimore who are communicating together. They already know each other. But what I did is, because I was connected to a couple of them, I asked the person who responded, was he aware of them? They are already working together. That's what that tweet was about. Someone else said that in her, I think she's in Texas, and most people don't want to hear about it, especially the older people, perhaps, she said. And I offered to do teach-ins with her via Zoom, because I think education around what reparations is, what it means, is something that's very important and necessary. I don't want her to be discouraged. So what did I do? I offered to help her. That's what we should be doing. We should be helping each other. And that's what I always do. And so, just for clarity, for those of you who are saying, I'm not answering her question, it's a trick bag. It's not a trick bag. I genuinely wanted to know. And I've made some good connections as a result of it. So have at it. If you want to go back to that tweet and respond, we would love to hear what you're doing. But I'll tell you what I've always said, and I've said it on this show before. I believe that the first order of reparations belongs to the Black farmers. So Sister Dawn Austin Page down in North Carolina, if you want to hear what she's doing, please go to my page under that tweet and you'll see what she's doing. Kudos to you, Sister Dawn, because the Black farmers are at risk, at high risk, because their entire lives are wrapped around their land, and we need to do things to help them. And I thank you for your work and your desire to help them. Now, let me bring on the guest of honor onto the show. I've said enough. I want to bring Pastor Davis on. Come on, Pastor Davis. How are you? Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year. Always a pleasure to join you on this platform, and I appreciate all the kind words, but it's a privilege. It's an honor to do this with you. And when we talk about working the way we do, and having kids and ministry and professional life, certain things we have to make time for, certain people we have to make time for. This work that you're doing and the character that you move with says, no, we make time for this. So when we talk about brotherhood, that's what drives that. This is important work. And if I could just piggyback a little bit on the reparations thing, because it's ironic that you brought that up, because I was thinking about that yesterday. Yesterday, I was thinking about it because as Black people, we all think about reparations. We all believe that we deserve reparations, but I don't think we think about it enough and really understand the how right it is for us to have that, right?
Right.
So I this is a I can kind of get this. This is a tombstone of my great great grandmother. You see, she died in 1916.
Yeah.
Her name
Yeah.
was Maria Joyner, right? So a cousin of mine went to her burial ground and took a picture of her tombstone. In addition to, she's my great great grandmother, my great grandparents, and my grandfather, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this woman, Maria Joyner, died in 1916, and they didn't know when she was born. So on her tombstone, it says she died around about age 77. It says about
Okay.
age 77. So they don't know exactly when she was born. They think she was 77 years old. And so the assumption is that she was born in 1839. This is
Wow.
my great great grandmother, born in 1839. So obviously she was born a slave,
Right.
slave,
Right.
right? So she had a son, and her son's was my great grandfather. He was born in 1861, and his wife was born in 1870. So my great grandfather was born in slavery. So my great great grandmother was a slave, had a son. Now, the son that she bore was the son of a slave master. She wasn't
Mm-hmm.
married.
Mm-hmm.
She was a slave and bore the son of the slave master. He was born in 1861. She must have been in her early 20s at the time, 22, I would imagine. Um, his wife was born in 1870, so she was born just after the end of slavery. But
Mm-hmm.
my great grandfather, of course, was born in slavery. And then my grandfather, who I knew, uh, he was born in 1890. Okay, he died in 1983. I was 12 when he died. I
Wow.
knew this man, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're not talking about something that's far away.
Right.
We're not talking about something that's hundreds of years ago. We're talking about my grandfather knew his grandparents who were born in slavery, right?
Yep.
His great grandmother was born in slavery, right? And my grandfather was a sharecropper, right? So these people, that meant he's renting somebody's, land to farm and to make some money, and it's not just for him. He's got to pay somebody else to use their land. And
Yeah.
so he fought in World War I in 1914 through 1918, and he
Mm-hmm.
came back and didn't get anything, like didn't get nothing, couldn't take advantage of no GI Bill, no New Deal.
Right. Right. Mm-hmm.
No Federal Housing Act loan,
Right. Yeah.
nothing that he, even though he didn't get a chance to take advantage of any of that. So the point I'm
Mm-hmm.
making is this woman, Maria Joyner, died at 77 with nothing.
Yeah.
She has children. They had nothing. My grandfather had nothing.
Yeah.
And so whatever they worked, whatever wages, whatever what they didn't get, nothing could be passed down. They didn't take advantage of any federal subsidized opportunities, nothing. And then, of course, my grandfather had my mother, right?
Yeah.
And she grew up. My mother was, probably malnourished. She was an adult, weighing about 90 pounds by the time she got married. And my father and her talked that they didn't even realize that they were malnourished. Like they grew up in such poverty, you
Yeah.
see, and
Yeah.
they didn't have anything. And so, my mother moved to New York, and with nothing, had to move with family. And my father had a very similar situation, very similar, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, they didn't have anything. So they started off with nothing. And when I think about my mother and father, what they were able to achieve with absolutely nothing is astonishing. But they didn't have anything, where they inherited something.
Right.
Nothing was built. So what I'm saying is the fact that we've done well. Now I'm doing okay, not great,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
doing okay. But I have friends who, my contemporaries who are white, same age group, their wealth or their assets and whatever they have, we may make the same income, but their wealth compared to mine, or their assets. When you talk about all their capital is far exceeds mine, right? In terms of that, because they inherited
Yeah.
money, and so you can never catch up. So these wealth gaps exist for this very reason. These people who I can point to their tombstones, and like I said, my grandfather was born in 1890, who I knew and was a big old boy when he died, but I knew him well. They didn't get anything, and so I think sometimes we just accepted
We
that
accept.
we didn't. And this story of mine, I just say it for context, like people who are watching the show, a lot of Black folks who are our age group,
Mm-hmm.
older, whatever, can share the same types of stories about their
Yeah.
relatives. And we didn't get anything, nothing. And we struggled, and we just think, oh, you just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But I don't know how many years of wages were lost. My great great grandmother, I'm sure she didn't want to be with that white slave master.
Right. Right. Right.
There's some damages there, among other things. And so, when I think about that, looking at that tombstone, I say to myself, man, and I think about the life they live, and I think about, my mother coming through that, of course, through Jim Crow and all the other struggles and everything else. And I think about what my grandfather would have lived through, especially being in World War I in 1914, having known about the Red Summer of 1919, knowing about Tulsa and Rosewood and all the various places that we could talk about,
Yeah.
seeing that, having 12 daughters. He had 12 daughters or 13,
Wow.
12 daughters, right? Sharecropper, and white wanting to have his daughters work for them, and he wouldn't let them work for these white people, right? Because they wanted them to work in their kitchens, not just to work in their kitchens, but to use them, to use them for themselves, right? So
Right.
sometimes my aunts had some resentment to my grandfather because they said he was grinning and shucking and kind of jiving, trying to get these white people not to take his daughters, not understanding that he was protecting them.
Right.
So he would say, "Oh no, Mr. So and so, I need my daughters to work on the farm. I have a whole lot of work here for them. I can't have them work in your kitchen, right?"
Yeah.
But he was doing that to keep his daughters nearby, protecting them from, being raped and everything else. When I think about all that, it's like, look, and to hear what you says, what am I doing to further that cause? Because it's not about a check. It's not about myself and where would I be, and I don't want to make it selfish. It's justice.
It's justice.
It's justice.
It's restorative justice, and it's limited, right? Because what was lost and what has been lost, some of it can never be restored. It
Yeah.
does. When we talk about the land loss, for instance, they've stolen 19 million acres of land from us. Well, they can give us back 19 million acres of land, but the personal dignities that our ancestors lost can never be restored, right? And so there are just some minimals that we should ask for. And I'm glad to see that some people are really beginning to teach according to the UN's definition, human rights definitions of reparations, and that's a global piece, okay? And it's as if when the UN says anything that affects the United States just ignores it, but while other countries are addressing it, United States ignores it. And it's just incredible to me. But I'm so happy that you shared that story about your great great grandmother. Hey, Brooke says they may not have been slaves, but he's saying that his great great grandmother was most definitely a slave. And she was mishandled. I'm being nice here, and I'm gonna say why I'm being nice. I spent all of 2022, I mean all of it, taking on the trauma of others. And Pastor Davis, you know, I lost my mother in 2021. So February 6th is the day that my world was turned upside down in 2021. And I came into 2022 still, you know, dealing with that or not dealing with that. And then I started hearing everybody's horror stories and
Right.
taking it on. I can't do that this year, um, because I need to be here. And guess what? Now, Pastor Davis, I'm not only trying to be here for Jason and Jayla. I need to be here for Deborah, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that was a hard place to get to. There are going to be so many no's
Yeah.
this year. And I honor Pastor Davis, and I'm so glad you returning here, Brooke, because Brooke has enjoyed listening to you in the past. I honor you, Pastor Davis, because as many people as you and I know in ministry, Pastor Davis, and as I mentioned in the lead up, Pastor Sammy Cologne have been two consistent brothers for me. And I can tell you, I know most of the leading ones in New York State. These two brothers have never switched up on me. And we are able to do, and we're in a community where there's so many churches,
Yeah.
but these two churches always try to collaborate with me, um, from a place of purity of heart. And that's something rare, Pastor Davis. That's why I needed to develop this segment just for you, because no, for real. I don't know who else. I mean, there are others who I do admire, but you keep it real. You go deep with your thought, and I need that. And I think the audience can benefit from it. So let me not get on a soapbox here. But I do have a story to share with you. I was doing my ancestry last night. Shout out to my cousin Jennifer Wyatt, who is um one of the historians in our family on my maternal side. But so I was just looking at it last night, and I started out wanting to do my paternal side. I wanted, because my dad didn't have any sons. So as much as I can find out, I only have one remaining aunt from my dad. Um, there's some cousins who could possibly do the DNA thing, male cousins, but I found a lot. So I'm looking at my grandmother, my dad's mom, and her cemetery, the cemetery. And I'm not going to share it because I'm going to do a documentary on it. But let me tell you how we continue to be harmed in this country. I'm from Alabama. I'll say that much because I don't want to shock my cousins and my sisters when they see this. So I'm looking, and the cemetery that our grandmother is buried in is a historic cemetery in the town. But the owners of the cemetery went bankrupt around 2010. And then the city decided not to allow any more burials. That made sense to me because there's no one to manage it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But here's some irony. That cemetery sits on 40 acres of land, Pastor
Mm-hmm.
Davis.
Right.
And I was trying to ask my daughter, do you know what the significance of that is? That there are up to, or there's space for up to 60,000 burials. But I don't believe they got to that because they shut it down before 60,000 people were buried there. But back in 2016, the benefactors, the volunteers, they petitioned the city to just give a little bit of money for the upkeep. Cost about $60,000. We're not talking about a lot of money. $60 a year to maintain it by giving just a little stipend to the volunteers who maintain it. It's overgrown. I'm just, excuse me, my grandmother passed before we were born, but my father, he just loved his mother like most people do, so
Mm-hmm.
much. And so when I think about having to go out there and not necessarily be able to easily find her resting place, and one of my uncles is out there too. I'm not sure if my grandfather is out there. He died several years before her, a few years before her. um but the harm, here's the harm. Well, first of all, the city ignores this famous cemetery for Blacks. And in that cemetery, Pastor Davis, are some Buffalo Soldiers and other famous people, but it is being ignored by the city. But at the same time that they petitioned the city to give $60,000, just $60,000 for the upkeep. No, actually, they didn't even ask for the whole 60. They probably thought they'd get matching from family and others.
Right.
They asked for 30. But guess what happened? Want me to blow your mind right now? I hope your mind will be blown because mine was. At the same time, a petition was put forward to allocate $45,000 for a Holocaust cemetery memorial.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I'm from the deep South. Everybody knows. I'm not going to even this documentary. You know where I'm from. A Holocaust memorial. Don't get me wrong. There were, as has been said and gotten people in trouble for even suggesting, there were Jewish slave holders, and they were definitely in my state, my home state. But that just hurt me so badly because they had no problems giving $45,000 to memorialize the loss that occurred in Germany of people's ancestors. But for our own, for our valiant soldiers, and I'm talking about grandmother, of course, but for actual military serving members, you won't upkeep it. They can't all be relocated. That hurt me a lot. And it just says that the harm, if we wake up every day, Pastor Davis, 365 days a year, we will see new harms being uncovered and new harms occurring. Go ahead.
No, I mean, we may have touched on it this last conversation in relation to Kyrie Irving and some of the things that he was dealing with. But what you just said doesn't surprise me at all. Because when we talk about our Jewish brothers and sisters, and I want to say brothers and sisters because I have a lot of Jewish friends. I grew up with good Jewish friends, people who I consider very close friends, right? And it's a delicate issue because you want to respect that their trauma and the things that they've gone through, but the reality is what you just said, that it's not anti-Semitic to say that there were Jewish slave owners. That's a fact. I said the last time we talked about this, my last name is Davis.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's a Jewish last name. And from what I understand, we may have come from Jewish slave owners, right? And as I've done research on that, there was a healthy amount of Jewish slave owners in the South. Sure. That's not make-believe. That you can Google that, you can research that. It's pretty much at your fingertips. It's a fact. Mm-hmm. Not only were there Jewish slave owners, but they were anti-integration. They didn't want integration. They even when it comes to the Civil War, they wanted to maintain slavery. They didn't want integration when we talk about the Jim Crow era as we move into civil rights. And what happened was, for many people, the World War II, was the game changer, right? Because they're dealing with their situation, and of course, Hitler is modeling what he did to them based upon what the U.S. was doing to its blacks. Yep. As a side note, people forget. I may have said this the last time we talked about this, that the Holocaust wasn't just Jews. There were 24,000 black folks that died in the Holocaust. I mean, people just act like that didn't happen. Like Hitler killed 24,000 blacks. There were gypsies. There were various ethnic groups that Hitler killed. So it's not to trivialize the Jewish experience. It's just to contextualize the fact that Hitler killed a lot of people, and including black folks, in the Holocaust. We are not allowed to share in that experience. It becomes exclusively about our Jewish brothers and sisters when it was not, right?
Right.
Nonetheless, they did receive reparations, ironically, right? I had Jewish neighbors who were very good to me. As a kid growing up, these neighbors were like a second set of mother and father, right? These are my neighbors. And I had multiple Jewish neighbors, right? I live in this community for as long as I have. I was back when it was a large percentage Jewish and synagogues and all of these things here. my neighbors were receiving reparations from Germany for years and years, right? And there was no question about that. So when we talk about like their experience here in the States, the museum or the amount of money allocated to what they're doing, and you think about the fact that these people have received reparations and these people were slave owners, it's an insult to us to see that what's happening in Alabama for your situation, right? That these people would not allocate, was it $60,000 or $30,000?
30,000.
Wouldn't allocate that with 45,000 over here.
Right.
It's a slap in the face. And when you say that it's causing harm over and over, that's what it is. It's an insult. It's a slap in the face. And it's not surprising. And the unfortunate thing is, even from the Jewish brothers and sisters, do they advocate at all? Do they say, hey, you gave us 45,000, but wouldn't give these people, 30,000 or whatever the number is?
Right. No, they were happy because they got what they wanted. It's like a kid, daddy, 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 give me, give me, give me. And daddy gets worn down. And I don't believe that this was a situation of being worn down. It seems as if this proposal was made and rejected. This one was made and accepted. And what of my family? What of the Buffalo Soldiers families? And I'm in New York, right? So I can't be down there. I remember when my grandfather passed, and if Juanita was here and she's not here tonight, she would be able to clarify whether it was my grandmother or my grandfather. But their plots are right next to each other in our family cemetery in the city, the country town where one of our cemeteries. And they had a bad storm, like a tornado or something came through. A tree landed on my granddad's or my grandmother's headstone. Not the headstone. It was back then they had the raised coffin, not coffins, the plots, the raised plots. Yeah. So it was cracked on the corner. And we were already up here. My mother just stressed about it so much until my cousin, was able to go down there and get the graveskeeper to repair it. At least we know where my grandfather is. We know about the repair. I'm pretty sure that I may have to search unless one of my cousins come on and say, Debbie, no, I don't know. But what I saw in the news after seeing her headstone, I might have to, because it's more than likely overgrown,
Yeah.
And so these are things that no one takes. It's as if we have to be strong in so many ways. No one really cares about all of the issues that we're dealing with. And so while I applaud, I really, really applaud the work that California is doing under the leadership, the task force leadership of Attorney Camilla V. Moore. She's doing so great, and she's catching a lot of flack. And I don't understand where that's coming from. And to tell you why I don't understand, because I don't have the time for the minutia of what I consider nonsense. She's leading this historic effort with her task force members. And I think sometimes we have to learn how to support people, or at least just be quiet instead of, doing harm, because we do harm to each other, and I'm real clear about that. But anyway, Pastor, thank you for sharing that. Let me see if we can get to some levity or some good news. Let's start with the good news. Can I start with the good news here?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see if I can screen share. Start with this good news, the information we heard earlier today about our dear young brother. And we're both football fans and have been watching football for a very long time. I'm trying to see the headline here. Damar Hamlin has breathing tube removed, FaceTimes with the Bills. Listen, for those who have been under a rock and don't know who Damar Hamlin is, he is a Buffalo Bills. What is he, a safety, Pastor
Safety.
Davis?
Yeah, it's a safety. Yeah.
Safety.
Hmm.
And he took a hard hit on Monday and went into cardiac arrest, was unconscious. They had to resuscitate him on the field. And according to his uncle, when they got him to the hospital, they had to resuscitate him again. If you don't know what resuscitation means, it means your heart stops. You are basically dead, but then they put the what are those things called, the defibrillator on you to revive you, to bring you back here, to get a heartbeat back. This 23-year-old man suffered this at the beginning of this week. The world, the nation has been praying for him. He had a GoFundMe to raise $2,500 for his Toys for Tots, and within hours, I believe, Pastor Davis, I don't know if it was you or another friend of mine had posted, within hours of this calamitous incident, it had raised over $2.5 million. So that's a million times what he wanted to raise. But now, from what I heard early this morning, and you may have an updated number for us, Pastor Davis, it is now at about $7.5 million. Have you heard anything different?
No, that was about what I heard. Yeah. Yeah.
That is incredible, and he's worthy of this from all indications. And I'm just thinking about myself. He's Jason's age, Pastor Davis.
24. Yeah, he's a young guy. Yeah.
Yes. And if if his mom was in the well, Jason will be 24 or later this year, but his mom was in the stands. She's a good woman, a strong woman. She did what she had to do to be there for her son. And the family, everybody has just been pulling for him. What is your commentary on this incredible young man who we are learning much more about?
Well, you said about he's known for a lot of charitable work and doing a lot of wonderful things. He apparently is a wonderful human being off the field, right?
Yeah.
But I think for me, it was just scary as a fan watching, to see he had made a tackle, stood up, and he passed out, and it was scary. It was very scary.
Oh, he made the tackle. Okay. Mm-hmm.
He had made the tackle and stood up and collapsed, and then he had to get the CPR, and it was, you never seen anything like that before. Now I've seen Hank Gathers, who played, I believe, I forgot what it was, a college, LSU, and I think he may have had a moment where he kind of stumbled and had some heart issues. And Reggie Lewis, the basketball player for the Boston Celtics, he stumbled. But what I saw with in this situation was different, and it was disappointing to see Skip Bayless, who's a cartoon character of a sports commentator, tweet out something kind of ridiculous about the need to keep the game playing because of the importance of the game and whatever. But no one is thinking the players are shaken up.
Yeah.
They're I mean, and but nonetheless, of course, we're praying for him. We all posted something from I did, and when it happened, of course, right in the moment, you're praying for him to see, and it was my wife that told me that he had his heart stopped again. I didn't know that part. You just said it, but my wife had told me that the other day, that I didn't know it was twice, that, and I was like, wow, this guy, and they had to do it again, CPR again. And, but for him to come through and to see the reports, it's nothing but elation. I mean, it's like you said, good news.
Yes.
It's because it's the nation or us or the community. It's just good to see victory. It's good to see something amazing. And hopefully, whatever happens, if he can continue to play, great. But like I said, this guy's a 24-year-old who seems to be this wonderful human being, and I think his story and his character and who he is, as it's being shared, it's important for people to see.
Yes.
Especially how folks view Black folks, and to see this amazing story. But I'm just saying, as a sports fan who watches sports commentary, I think, Skip Bayless, who's on Fox Sports or whatever, he's always on every day with his nonsensical commentary. needs to be held accountable, which he is, for tweeting some nonsense about the game needing to be played and not taking into consideration the urgency of what was going on.
Right.
And it's typical, we talk about harm given to us. That's an example.
That is an example. I was thinking the same thing, because it's as if, go out there on that field. He's the one who's hurt. The rest of y'all get back out there.
Yeah.
There's
yeah.
backup safety,
Yeah.
do your job.
Yeah.
It's
failure to see these people as human beings.
Yeah.
And that they're shaken up and that they're emotional and that they're just gladiators. They're just, there for our show.
Entertainment. Yeah.
Right. And
I have been one. I haven't watched since the whole Colin Kaepernick thing, but Jason and I happen to be doing some work over in the annex. I'll talk to you offline about that, of the church. On Monday, I get this alert. It was breaking news right away, and I was like, "Oh my God," And I started thinking about all of our people who play for the NFL. And don't get me wrong, I'm so proud of what Colin Kaepernick stood for, stands for, and lost his career over.
Yeah.
And it just made, when I saw this young man, this happened to him, and then heard that his mom was in the stands, I said, you know what, for me, and I'm not saying this is not for anyone else, this is only for me. I said, you know what, I'm going to really sit with myself and think about this continuing boycott. Why? Because so many of our young men aspire to be NFL players, and they're carrying the weight of entire families. Like most people, I saw someone, I'm not sure who that is, but I appreciate your condolences in the comments. We don't wear every harm, every sorrow that we are experiencing around on our sleeves, because we have work to do, right, Pastor Davis?
Right.
We have work to do. We don't know what it took, what kind of sacrifices it took. We don't know who had to live out of a car and then wash up in bathrooms and then take boys to their football little league practices and the like. We don't know what people. I'm strictly talking about Black people. So it's one thing if all of them said we're not going to the NFL anymore, then there's been a victory, right?
Yeah.
But what about those families who need support?
Yeah.
And what about those who like myself boycott the NFL but have not spoken on behalf or up in any kind of concern other than to say, see, that's why they should all leave, So that's, for me, that's some introspection that I'm taking away from this. If it's only for his mom and other moms like him, they need our support. They need the energy. And from what I've heard the doctors say, he feels all the love. That's what his coach shared with us today, right? Yeah. So, sometimes like our nurses here, I don't know if they're still negotiating with the different unions and the city and hospitals, but we have an impending nursing strike here, and we can't afford it here in New York. With this proliferation of people who they keep sending to our city, we can't afford it. So that's a different type of thing. I would stand with the nurses, right? That's a different type of thing. And at the same time, I'm not going to be mad with the scabs that come in, because people will die if there are no nurses. But this is different, and those families need support. So that's me. That's just me thinking about how to move forward and how to be impactful, because these pieces of trash owners are not going to necessarily do right.
And listen, football makes a lot of money. The NFL makes a tremendous. I want to say I don't know what the recent numbers are. I think it's in the area of like a $10 billion industry or close to that, or $8 billion, something. It's a significant amount of money.
Yeah.
and these owners make a ton of money, and the players, their average career is what, 4 years, maybe it's a 4-year career.
Mhm.
Their
Mhm.
average life expectancy is about like 59. They don't live long, football
No.
players. Um, their money's not necessarily guaranteed, in
Right.
all instances. Um, and you're right, they have to, support families and stuff. And so I would say to any kid, like if you're athletic, I wouldn't go to football. Now, if that's your thing and you can make it, fine. But I always steer kids, baseball, basketball is where that long money
Yeah.
and long career is.
Yeah.
So I have and I love football, and I watch it, but I have sort of you know
Love hate. Yeah, I know.
yeah, love
I,
hate relationship. And those, I boycotted for a long time, and um then I switched up, and for a number of the introspective reasons that you're talking about, and
yeah.
so I said, let me go back to it and support it, and for the reasons that you're talking about for yourself. And but to see this, it should cause us to think about mothers, because 24, these guys out here having concussions and cardiac arrest and
It's
all
crazy.
types of things playing football. And
Yeah.
football is a very, very, very tough sport. That's just,
It is.
it is. And you're talking about exploitation.
Oh,
I mean,
for
that's, you
real.
can't, yeah,
I'll
yeah,
never forget. Jason played with I-9. I don't know if you remember I-9. They used to have their signs everywhere. It's not Little League. I don't know why it's called that. It's not even Pop Warner, but oh, it's like flag. And so there's like no contact. But I remember he was about, I don't know if he was 7 or 9, but it was time for them to transition out of flag into contact.
yeah,
And he took a hit. He took a hit so hard, but that made my child say, Mom, this is my last season. He had
yeah,
played for years.
yeah,
This is my
that's,
last season. He did not
yeah,
like that. And
yeah.
I was happy about that.
Yeah, my mother wouldn't let me play football in high school. I was really good, and she's like, "You're not doing that." And I remember going to practice, and the way they teach you to hit, I mean, they were hitting, and it's like I had friends, and these guys are hitting hard, like it's
Yeah.
unnecessary to hit that hard.
Yes.
And so even with some of the rule changes to kind of soften up the game, it's still a very physical game.
It's
Yeah, it's
very
very
physical.
physical. Yeah,
It's violent.
it's very
And
violent. Yeah,
yeah, I think
yeah,
some of the players who don't even get in get bloodied. I don't know,
yeah.
in the game. But I'm so happy that he's on the comeback and
Hmm.
there's no neurological damage, I understand. So we're gonna just keep praying for him and lifting him up and hoping for the best. And maybe to their credit, out of shame, they're not going to try to make this game up because they want to stay on their little schedule for the playoffs. More power to them. I'm happy about that. I don't know what that means for the Bills. And who were they playing? The Colts? Were they playing
Yeah,
the Colts?
I believe
Yeah,
so.
I
Yeah,
don't know what
yeah.
that means for those teams. I guess it'll be like a tie, which I don't know how they make that right for those teams, but I do believe that that was the correct decision to make. Pastor Davis, we're winding down. Let me get to our next little conversation here. See what you have to say here about and I don't know what you think. I would love to hear it about today being January 6th. January 6th, for those of you who don't recall, 2 years ago today, January 6th, we here in the United States experienced what has become known as an insurrection. By, if you remember the pictures, and probably couldn't believe your eyes, like many of us. There were people climbing up the walls of the Capitol building, and they eventually, excuse me, went in. They threatened and they wanted to harm the president, the vice president at the time, Mike Pence. They wanted to hang him, and they wanted to get Nancy Pelosi. The nonsense just goes on and on. Pastor Davis, what are your thoughts about this day?
Oh my God, I couldn't believe what I was watching when I saw this. And You know, in light of everything we've talked about up until this point, it it's another moment where it's traumatic. Even though you're watching it, um, somebody might say it's not specifically impacting the black community, but it is, um, because among the leading conversations at the time was, of course, the police shootings and the brutalities in our community, and for no reason, like a lot of unarmed people being shot by law enforcement, and the protesting and a lot of things that were happening, around that time or just slightly before that time. And to see these people storm the Capitol like that and really able to go get that far,
Yeah.
uh,
Incredible.
unscathed.
Mhm.
This is our lawmakers.
Yep.
This is, I don't want to make it like this, but just for the analogy's sake, it's like sacred ground. Like, how do you
Mhm.
how does
Mhm.
that happen?
Right.
And they get there, and they're in the place, and they people are taking pictures, and they're putting their feet up on desks, and the lawmakers are scared, and they're hiding, and people are on camera, and there's no fear of being on camera, and there's no fear of this sort of and I'm saying that could never be us.
No.
We would never be able to do that. And that was the height of white privilege and
Yep.
white supremacy.
Yep.
So when I say about the trauma, or that it is you know it's like implicit. It's like you're watching it, and it affects you, because you would never be able to get away with that. But it's what the country's all about. Um, and of course, Donald Trump and his supporters, they stirred this up, and what it lets you know is that there's a fair percentage of people that think like this.
Oh yeah.
We've been saying it forever, and
Mhm.
America saw it. And this is if these people are this is what the nation was founded. These are the types of people that founded the nation. This is who they are. If you wanted to get a sense of what is America about, that's it right there.
That's
That
it.
wasn't an anomaly.
Hmm.
That
No.
wasn't some, that's who the nation is.
That's who the nation
Yeah.
is.
Yes.
And there's no getting around that. Someone had that question, or maybe they wrote an article, and I saw it on Twitter. I didn't read it because you just answered it, and we all know the answer. Had that been a bunch of black people doing that, I
They'd have
don't
been
think
mowed down. It would have
mow
been,
down,
yeah.
no arrest, and as you said, some of those officers, and I don't know what has become of them, they escorted them in.
It's,
There had been some suggestion that there are, and I didn't watch the hearings and stuff,
mhm.
because I really know what the outcome is going to be. I want to applaud the Congressman Thompson and his team. I gained some respect for him where I didn't have the same type of respect for him before the hearings. He stood his ground. I mean, you from Mississippi, you're gonna have to learn how to stand your ground or just kowtow. So
Yeah.
he didn't do that. But I do wonder about these so-called these lawmakers who were implicit or involved with this. I don't know what the outcome was. I know some things, but I also know that when we get to our next topic, a lot of whatever they've done will be reversed. And so, yes, we're in total agreement. We know that it was a bunch of us out there doing that kind of stuff. None of us, we just have those parents who didn't come or loved ones who didn't come would be burying a lot of black dead people because they wouldn't have given us a chance. And it's crazy, but this is the country that we live in. Um, Finally, Pastor Davis, let's talk about something that brings a little levity to this conversation. I say it's levity because this has been a popcorn eating week. Watching the fiasco, the clown show called the House of Representatives, the 118th House of Representatives, that still has no leader. And as Pastor Davis and I were preparing for tonight's show, he was like, well, what are we going to talk about? Well, we knew we were either going to say, well, they finally did what the nation desires that they do, choose a leader, or we'd be coming on to tell you that there's still no leader. And so it's the latter. There's still no leader. And just because they may elect one on this fourth round of voting at 10 p.m. tonight, that doesn't mean we have a leader. We just have somebody who's called the speaker. It says the chamber adjourns as McCarthy's bid gained support. So what he had earlier was he couldn't get over 200. He couldn't get over that hump of 200. He needs 218 votes to become the next Speaker of the House if all members are voting. If all members are not voting and any one member abstains or is puts their vote in as absent, then he only needs 217. Be that as it may, at the last count, he had gotten up to 214 votes. Well, all of the Democrats voted with Congressman Hakeem Jeffries for a grand total of 212 votes. That is all that the Democrats had. And so we wait, and not with bated breath. I'm personally tired of it by now, to see what happens at 10 p.m., Pastor Davis, in terms of having a Speaker of the House. This man apparently has had to give away so much, including his dignity, in his pursuit of the House speakership. What are your thoughts on this whole fiasco?
I mean, as I said to you earlier, I hadn't kept that much up with it, but what I will say is this has to be unprecedented. The level, I mean, when is the last time the nation has ever experienced anything like this? Like, this has got to be
65 years ago. It went to 10 rounds. So we're talking 165 years. He's breaking his own records. He's breaking records, tying records, going beyond records, making new records.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we've reached a state 165 years. 160, that's what you said. 165.
Yes.
I mean, that's astonishing. That and it affects not having a leader affects a lot of things in terms of things being happening for the people. Like, things are put on hold because they can't do things, and it just feels like. This is like a Keystone Cops or a clown show or what have you. But I think, what we just said in terms of, was it the 2-year anniversary of the insurrection?
Yeah.
It almost seems appropriate. Like, this is where the country has been sort of, plummeting in terms of our standing.
Absolutely.
So, but I don't know. So 10 p.m. I guess we'll find out and see what that does. But it's I think for me it's astonishing and unprecedented, and it's almost embarrassing. I don't have I was trying to get a sense as to what some of the issues are, but I'm not even sure. Yeah.
To be honest, I don't know if it matters. I think, okay, if we go back to where we started in our discussion about reparations, it means that for the next 2 years, at least, there won't be any discussion about reparations.
No. Yeah.
We're totally against it. Our only hope is that the president would sign an executive order establishing at least a committee and within that executive order allocating funding for it that Congress then has to approve, but they won't do it on their own. So there's some far-reaching implications in that regard. Other than that, because to me that's top floor right now. I don't. They're gonna spend a lot of time. They're gonna waste a lot of time. In fact, I believe those four outstanding votes have been cast for Jim Jordan, who wants the Judiciary Committee, which is why he didn't. I just love this kind of stuff. I'm sort of wonky like that, but he's in control. So if he comes back and easily wins, it is because Jim Jordan has gotten much more than we anticipate
Okay.
him getting. It's shameful. It's going to be worse than John Boehner that year. What was that, 2018, was it,
I
that
believe so.
he
Yeah.
had to try to
Yeah.
whip those votes together? It's just shameful. But again, it won't affect us. We have no functioning legislative branch right now, because if, for those of you who don't know, it is the House of Representatives. They write the laws, and then they send them, they pass them and send them to the Senate. But the
Yeah.
Senate is not in any position to approve any
That's
law.
right.
They are not functioning as a law
That's what I'm saying about the
right.
fact that laws can't get passed, like things can't get done. Like people don't understand.
Nothing can get done. Right.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
urgency of the speaker. That's an important person. And it's what it is. It's a mockery of really what their job is, what the government is all about, right? They could care less about the people. I mean, this is astonishing. 165 years, and people's lives are affected, can be affected by this.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I appreciate those comments also in the comments section. Listen, we are drawing to an end, but I feel like if I have an opportunity and I'm present of mind, I have to remind you all of a show I did a few months ago on Brother Othel. I'm trying to scroll his banner there to his website. I'm not a stranger to controversy. It's only controversial because mainstream Black media will not cover this brother's case. He's called Ozone. That is his pet name, out of Florida. He's accused. And these laws don't work for us, but they are supposed to cover us. He has not been found guilty yet, but the charges leveled against him in the accusation of him having killed an officer is the death penalty. And we know we are talking about the state of Florida. What his supporters and his family have been trying to do is raise money so that he can continue to have his team of defense lawyers, who I believe are really solid men and women, because in the state of Florida, to decide to defend a Black man accused of killing a white cop, they must know that they have a fair chance, at least, of getting the death penalty charges dropped against him, at the very least. Right. And I believe, I don't believe in the death penalty, but I also don't believe in leaving any Black man or any Black woman without support. So if those of you who are watching this, if you could go to his site, OTHL, it's scrolling, guys, because I'm going to always mess things up, .org, OTHAL, Othal.org, and consider a donation. It doesn't matter to them. They're just trying to keep the law team on retainer. It's very expensive to mount a defense, especially on capital charges. You don't know. I don't know. And honestly, the video I saw, I'm not clear. But one thing I am clear about is that he deserves the best defense that he can get. Please consider supporting him. I would really appreciate that. And I'm sure his family, beautiful children, and his friends and supporters will also appreciate you all doing that. And Pastor Davis, I think we're done. Do you have anything left to say? End us out today in this 6th day of 2023.
Yeah, listen, of all the stuff that we're talking about, especially we're talking about reparations and things related, I would say to the audience, like, don't just listen to the content on this show, act on it, participate. You know, Deborah Jenkins is a great leader. Don't just listen to her content, support whatever she's doing. She has the ear of a lot of people, and I think this platform can be not just for content, but an opportunity to establish a movement. So as you hear this information, let's not just sit on it. Let's use this platform as an opportunity to make some changes and make things happen.
Oh, thank you, Pastor. And honestly, I appreciate your nice words, your kind words. I'm just out here trying to help us.
Yeah.
Just really want to help us. And
But this space is powerful, and the more I'm thinking about it, like, and as you archive these shows and they can be viewed again, this is powerful. This is a platform, and you're building, and there's a stream of content, and it's archived. People can refer to it.
Yeah.
This is building something, and it's a voice. It's information, and like you said, that you do have the ear of people, right? So we can hold people accountable. We can ask questions. There is an audience that, as you were saying, that's paid attention to what the show is doing on various platforms. That audience has a voice through this what you're doing. And so when you're speaking to whoever it is, you're speaking having not just your church following, but the following of people who are supporting this platform. So people need to understand the more you're backing this and donating to it and viewing and participating, the more it strengthens, what you're doing, what we're doing to make changes. And if we have agendas that we've talked about, agenda items, reparations being one, it's not just a conversation. Let's use this to move the needle to some extent.
That's right. That's right. Thank you so much, Pastor Davis. I look forward to our chat next month. Please say hello to your beautiful wife for me. And your babies are just growing up. 7 years old. Oh my goodness.
7 years old. Just like that. Just like that. And acting like she's 17. But yes.
My 18-year-old acts like she's 28. So yeah, I'm like, okay, you got all of that to look forward to, Pastor. Mm-hmm. So for her acting like 17 right now. 18 is gonna blow your mind. No, they're great. They're great. It's a blessing to have children. Listen, audience, thank you so much for joining us tonight. That's my brother Jojo. I just realized that's my brother Jojo. I'm happy to always amplify the plight of Brother Ozone because I believe in it. And so thank you all. Come back next week. I'm going to try to do something next week, but I have to let you know, it might have to be sort of scaled back because I'm starting this really exciting research project. It's really interesting because it's really about the tombstones, the burials, our people, but with the twist, all of these colleges in the Northeast that enslaved our people, we are cataloging them. Many of them, like Rutgers, Princeton, Harvard, and Yale, they've already started their process. And of course, we heard earlier last year, Georgetown, but there are others. And we are starting with Columbia University. That's crazy. It's a crazy mess over there. And I'll be sharing more about it, but I will be up to my neck in research beginning on Monday. So I will do as much as I can to be here, but as long as Pastor Davis is here and available for First Fridays, we will be here for Black Talk Platform, chatting with the pastor, with Pastor Anthony Davis. God bless you all. Have a good night.
Good night.
Peace.